because I have been seeing posts of videos, and I've been seeing people, Black people specifically, talking about how the Civil Rights Act has been repealed, or that Trump is aiming to repeal the Civil Rights Act. A lot of that is due to the fact of him wanting to get rid of DEI, and affirmative action and things like that. And I started doing some research to see if that was actually true. Now, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Part of the reason why I wanted to do the research, because it did not make a whole lot of sense to me that someone who was wanting to investigate the research and research, and declassify Martin Luther King Jr.'s death, which is among those. There's like two others. There's John F. Kennedy, and Robert F. Kennedy. It didn't make any sense to me that he would want to declassify Martin Luther King Jr.'s death and at the same time want to shut down or repeal the Civil Rights Act of 1964, something that Martin Luther King pioneered. Now, I understand that there's some controversy that's going on about that. And I've actually mentioned that into my comment post. Michi X has talked about Martin Luther King Jr., the actual thing that he stood for, and how the Civil Rights Act actually has hurt Black people in some ways, many ways actually. But you can look at that video in my community post, or you can go to Michi X's channel where she's talking in depth specifically about Martin Luther King Jr. She's made quite a few videos about her disdain for Martin Luther King Jr. and the Civil Rights Movement. But I'm not going to talk about that. I want to talk about the Civil Rights Act really quickly. Hey, Starry Eyed. Good evening to you. I hope that you're doing well. So, fortunately, I have my handy dandy Chat GPT with me. I'm going to enlarge it really quickly. If you are liking the video and the content here, make sure you hit the like button. And if you are comfortable here, make sure that you are, subscribed. So that way that you'll be able to go deeper into some of this stuff with politics with me from my point of view. All right. So let's go ahead and get into this civil rights situation, right? I wrote down here, let me scroll up really quickly. It says, "Greetings, ChatGPT. I have a question. Did President Trump repeal the Civil Rights Act of 1965? And if he did, is the Civil Rights Act thus 1964 is still in place?" Now, let me switch the screen here. At the time, I didn't know that what people were referring to as the Civil Rights Act of 1965 is actually specifically talking about voting rights of 1965, which is talking about discrimination with Black people and voting. Or discrimination between race and when it comes to voting, that was specifically geared towards, Black people at that time. So let's get into this. Hello, James. So let's get into this right here. So no, President Donald Trump did not repeal the Civil Rights Act of 1965 or the Civil Rights Act of 1964 during his presidency. Both landmark pieces of the legislation are still in place. So this goes into the Civil Rights Act of 1964. This says this is the act that prohibits discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin in employment, education, and public accommodations. It remains a cornerstone of the U.S. civil rights law. And so we go down here to the Voting Rights Act of 1965. It says this act aimed to eliminate racial discrimination in voting, specifically targeting practices like literacy tests and other barriers that disenfranchise Black voters. While not repealed, the Supreme Court's decision in the Shelby County versus Holder 2013 weakened its enforcement. The court struck down a key provision requiring certain states and localities to seek federal approval before making changes to their voting laws, which some argue undermined the act's effectiveness. However, so this says if you're curious about specific changes or actions related to the civil rights regarding or during Trump's presidency, feel free to ask. But the bottom line is that it is still in place, right? There's nothing that has been repealed or moved or doesn't even look as if Donald Trump is looking that way to remove the civil rights movement. So I continue here asking, what did Donald Trump specifically repeal from the Civil Rights Act of 1965? And it says Donald Trump did not repeal the Voting Rights Act of 1965. However, on January 21st, 2025, he signed an executive order titled Ending Illegal Discrimination and Restoring Merit-Based Opportunity, which revoked Executive Orders 11246. This 1965 order, issued by President Lyndon B. Johnson, had mandated affirmative action for federal contractors to promote equal employment opportunities, regardless of race, color, religion, or origin. This revocation of the executive order effectively ended the requirement for federal contractors to implement affirmative action programs aimed at increasing workplace diversity. It's important to note that this action pertains specifically to employment practices related to the federal contract. It does not alter the provisions of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which prohibits racial discrimination in voting. In summary, while President Trump has rescinded policies related to affirmative action and federal contracting, the Voting Rights Act of 1965 is still in place. So the bottom line is this: the Civil Rights Act is not repealed. I need for people to stop using that as a means for clickbait or for intimidation for Black people, to make it seem as if they're being targeted specifically for, or among those that are targeted for something that Trump is aiming to do. That's not happening. He did target the employment equal opportunity, the equal employment opportunity, which is geared towards things with DEI and things like that. There is that particular thing, but everything else is still in place. All right. Stop worrying about the Civil Rights Act. Again, it does not make sense for him to worry about that when he is wanting to release the information regarding Martin Luther King Jr. Now, why he's wanting to do that, I'm not entirely sure as to why he wants to do that. I'm not sure he wants to do that because he's all cool and buddy with Martin Luther King or his history or whatever. But it doesn't make sense that he would want to declassify the assassination with Martin Luther King Jr. and then want to strike down the Civil Rights Act in which Martin Luther King Jr. was a forerunner for. Okay, so again, stop scaring Black people into thinking and believing that the Civil Rights Act is going to be removed. There is nothing that shows that. Do I like Trump? I don't necessarily care for Trump. I admire some of the policy that has been done and has been enacted, including, removing the illegal immigration and stuff like that. But I'm also wanting to put some common sense out there when it comes to the policies that are out here. There's too much fear mongering that is happening, and Black people are being used for it. Again, don't worry about the Civil Rights Act. Everything is still intact. We'll still look at it to see what could happen for it in the future. But for now, everything is good. All right. Just wanted to share that with you all. Have an amazing evening. Take good care of yourself. And again, if you like the content, make sure you click the thumbs up this video. Leave your comment below. If you feel like you want to subscribe, you're more than welcome to do so. All right. Have a good one. Stay awesome.